Welcome to Blue Talks.
It's 3:30 after school, and there's a crowd of kids at the back of the school. There's two young girls in the middle of the crowd, and there's about to be a fight. One girl said something about the other, and they've decided that they need to settle this dispute with a scrap, as the young kids called it at that time. Hair pulling, punching, scratching starts to happen. Then teachers come running out, and they split them apart. Both girls end up getting suspended from school. But for one of them, that was only one of the first suspensions of many to follow, plus more trouble in school. The next year, this same girl is caught shoplifting at a big box store. She is with her mom, they're grocery shopping, and just as they're about to leave the store and exit, a floor walker comes up and says, "Come with me." They're escorted up into a private room where the girl is asked to empty out her purse, and there's $200 worth of makeup in her purse. The mother is mortified. How could you do this to us? They decide to let her go with a warning. She's only 13. This is the first time she's done something like this. So off they go to the most uncomfortable car ride this girl has ever experienced. The year after that, this same girl runs away from home. And the parents are upset. They're confused. What is going on? Why does she keep doing these things? After a few weeks, she returns home and life goes on, quote unquote, normal. The following year, this girl is in high school. The parents receive a phone call in the middle of the night, and it's the hospital calling. Your daughter is here. She's been brought in by ambulance from a teen house party. She has cuts on her wrist and she has alcohol poisoning. Come and get her. Meanwhile, the girl sitting in the hospital bed, a nurse comes up when no one else is in the room and starts scolding her, telling her, "Look at you, so young, so pretty, and you're coming in here so drunk with cuts all over you. Your parents must be so ashamed." The girl digs her face into the pillow and starts to cry, and she knows she's a screw up. So you might wonder, what is going on with this girl? Why is she behaving in this way, in this erratic behavior? What is going on with her? So you might be wondering those same questions, like what is going on with her? But what I invite you to ask instead of what's wrong with her is what happened to her? What's happening to her? Some questions that we should be curious about are, how is her home life really? Is there addiction and mental health issues in the home? Is there violence? Who are her primary influences? Who does she hang around with? Usually when kids start to behave in this way, in this manner, it's not for just some random reason. There's usually a reason behind that. There's usually something that they're trying to cover up, something they're trying to pretend is not there. Usually they're hiding behind anger, which usually means they're hiding behind pain. The girl I was talking about, that girl was me. That was me as a kid, that was me as a teen. There's no such thing as bad kids or bad people. There are only hurt, traumatized, troubled kids and adults. And that's who I was. You see, what no one really saw that was happening was what was going on at home. My dad was an alcoholic. He had mental health issues, and unfortunately, that ended up transferring to me and my sisters. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of abuse going on in the home. One of the things that I remember experiencing all throughout my life was this feeling of loneliness and isolation. I felt like I'm the only one that's going through things like this. Why me? Why are these things happening to me? Because I never really heard about these kind of things happening, like ever. You know, like you hear in the news every once in a while, or like on a Dateline show about something like this, but, you know, not where I lived. You know, like I never really heard those kind of things. Kids are resilient and they find ways to try to just navigate through life when there's no guidance. And for me, one of my powers when I was a kid was that I used to daydream and I used to fantasize. I used to fantasize about my memory getting wiped and not thinking or feeling or remembering anything that I had been through. Once that fantasy faded away, it turned into anger for me, anger and confusion. You see, I had no guidance, no validation, no acknowledgement, no role models, no examples to really look at and say, I see myself in that person and look where they're at. So I decided I'll just numb it all away. So for me, I experimented with many different things, but the one thing that I stuck to was alcohol. What I liked about it was the fact that it did just that. It just numbed everything. I didn't feel anything. I didn't think about anything. I didn't have to deal with anything when I was drinking. And that continued for a very long time. Lots of trouble in between that, because obviously when you pursue a life of addiction, nothing good comes out of it. That was all until about 8 years ago, when I made the decision that enough was enough and something needed to change. I needed to change. I felt my life fading away. I felt when I would wake up in the morning sick and hungover and just like in the worst condition ever. I know that one of these days I'm going to wake up, or I'm not going to wake up. I'm not going to open my eyes, right? And it just, at that point, you know, I had a family, or I was married to the love of my life. I had a career in nursing. Everything looked so good on the outside, but inside I was slowly dying and killing myself. Addiction has many layers. The one thing I found that addiction has in common is the numbing factor. When we get addicted to something, we're addicted to the fact that it serves as an escape for us, even if it's for a moment in time. And it could look like shopping, overspending, sex, jumping from one relationship to another relationship, gambling, you know, and obviously drugs and alcohol. So I invite you to turn within yourself and ask yourself, when life situations arise, when challenges happen in my life, where do I turn to? What do I turn to? Do I actually face these things and explore how I can learn and grow from them? Or do I try to escape them and I use something to just, an instant gratification to just numb it all away? In my journey of recovery, one of the key ingredients that I really cultivated within myself was a willingness. Once I made the decision that something needed to change, I just became willing to try whatever, you know, basically whatever it took, I was just willing to try. If it couldn't help, it couldn't hurt, right? So something I had to learn was the art of letting go. And for the most part, the things that I had to let go of were things that I had zero control or power over, which, funny enough, I actually realized that probably 99.9% of my problems and troubles were things that I had no control over, right? There are things that I struggled for so long to try to like get questions to, like, why did this happen to me? Like all those things that were just kind of, they were rhetorical questions. And that actually involved forgiveness. I started to learn and grow in ways that were conducive to my growth. I started to become visible. And one of the big things for me that really started to heal that inner pain, heal me from the inside out, was starting to speak boldly about what had happened to me. Because the more I spoke about it, the less power and control it had over me. I became visible. I started speaking and writing about my pain and my journey, as uncomfortable and as gritty as it was, and it still is. Forgiveness and surrender was huge, and it continues to be huge in my life. You see, I had to forgive people, places, and things that once again I had no power over, but it had power over me. And I had to surrender my ego, my self-will to a being, to something that was higher, a higher power, something greater than myself. And for me, that was a God of an understanding, of my understanding. I started to develop a deep and spiritual relationship with that God of understanding and with myself. And I started to really know myself and know what the things that are filling for me, that fill me up. And for me, as you'll see in these pictures, are my beautiful children and my husband, and just time alone with myself in nature, in meditation. Something that I could have never imagined in the past, ever being alone with my thoughts. I started to feel safe in my body, safe just in my surroundings. And that little girl inside of me that used to dream and wish and hope just to have that role model, that somebody to look up to and say, you know, like I see myself in that person. I became that person. Now I am that person. And now I have a deep sense of responsibility to be that person to others who are going through or have gone through the similar situation as I had, which are actually very many, unfortunately. A few things I'd like to invite you to take out of my talk today are perspective and awareness. And the first thing is, instead of asking, when we're faced with difficult people in our life, it could even be somebody who's rude to you at the drive-thru, somebody who cuts you off in traffic, or something even deeper, you know, a troubled family member, somebody who's hurt you very deeply. Instead of asking what's wrong with them, you know, asking what happened to them, and really approaching them with compassion and with curiosity. And then the other thing is to really take stock in ourselves and what we do when we're confronted with difficult situations and challenges, what we put out to the world, right? Like, how do we deal with these things or not deal with them, right? And just coming from a place of courage and resourcefulness. The choice is all ours. The choice is mine. Every day I get the choice to wake up and decide what my attitude is going to be for that day. And I'm going to leave it with this, where there was a time when I felt that I was buried, that I had been buried into the ground. But what really happened was that I was planted, and now I'm growing in ways that I never imagined I would ever grow. And you can too.